So before we get started with the pictures, I want to share some advice from Carole, which is use your ears first. Your ears will lead you to where the birds are. And to learn about bird signs, she recommends Googling. You can do anything like, what do mallard ducks sound like? And most probably you'll be taken to the website of the Cornell Ornithological Lab, or Cornell Lab of Ornithology, if I'm being correct. Someone else recommended Merlin for bird sounds too. So we will go right to our pictures because that's what we're all here for. Give me a minute here while I share. Okay, here we are. You all, of course, know these are wood ducks, and we'll be talking about them when we hit the W's. Mallards are everywhere along the Delaware Canal. You have the drab female, the dapper male, and in this case, you have some ducklings. Often you'll see ducks on the canal that don't quite look like mallards. They look like they must be something else. Well, they are. Mallards and domestic ducks are known to breed together, and their offspring can look like a combination of the two. Some are very, very beautiful, and some are downright weird looking. Here's a merlin. Okay. Merlins are in the same family as the peregrine falcons and the kestrels. It's a small falcon, and it feeds on birds and insects, and it migrates south in the late fall. Mourning doves, again, a rather ubiquitous bird in our area. This one picked a particularly nice place to pose. And mute swans, some in Washington Crossing. They were introduced from Asia to be ornamental birds in people's ponds, and they're very aggressive despite that romantic look. Northern cardinals. Okay, even though cardinals get their pictures taken most often during the winter and beautiful snowy days, they're here in our area year-round, and they're very, very good at breeding. They can produce up to 4 broods each year. So it's a wonder, actually, we don't have more of them. The northern flicker is a member of the woodpecker family. Its old name used to be the yellow shafted flicker, because here you can see the yellow feathers in its tail. And indeed, it suits its name because its sound is flick. The northern mockingbird. It mimics other birds and cats, or even my mother, actually. It's in the same family as catbirds and brown thrashers. They're very, very protective of their young. And Carole had a good story about her father, who happened to be trimming a hedge that contained a mockingbird's nest. And the female mockingbird came down and literally hit him with its body. And that's a vivid memory that she has from her childhood. This is a lovely little northern ruffed-winged swallow. They catch insects as they are flying, and they like to nest in cracks and crevices, and the canal structures have lots of those. So we have lots of northern Ruffed-winged swallows. They migrate south for the winter, and in that process, they stage for the journey that they're going to undertake. And they sit together 50, 70, 100, all in a row on wires. So I've seen this along the Delaware Canal in the upper reaches, upper Black Eddy. An orchard oriole looks very much like a Baltimore oriole. It has the same sound, the same habits, the same kind of hanging woven nest, but they're brick red rather than orange, and not nearly as common as a Baltimore oriole in our area. The osprey. Osprey faced the same threats as the bald eagles did, and they have come back on par with the bald eagles, though bald eagles did get better press coverage, as bald eagles tend to do. Ospreys do head south for the winter to our country's southern coastal states, and they don't return until March. So they nest later than bald eagles. And they often are delayed because they like to nest in cell phone towers, and the owners of the towers take down the nest during the winter. The osprey comes back, and then they have to rebuild. So the osprey are sitting on their nests now, and in the lower photo, you can see the osprey with a fish in its claws. The palm warbler. It's the earliest warbler to arrive in the spring, and it's just passing through on its way from Central America to up north. The peregrine falcon. It's a fast-flying bird. They nest on cliffs, such as the Nakamixon Cliffs, bridges, like the Benjamin Franklin Bridge in Philadelphia, and high-rise buildings. An example of which is the Rachel Carson building, in which the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources has its office. In fact, they have a falcon cam going. Falcons eat pigeons, and isn't that convenient when you're living in those urban areas? The Pennsylvania Game Commission does track peregrine falcons, and they do protect their nest, and they endeavor to ban the babies, though that's tricky business because, of course, falcons don't like these guys coming in, grabbing their babies, and banding them. Unfortunately, there's no sign of a falcon nest this year up at Nakamixon Cliffs. A pied-billed grebe. It's a diving bird. They pass through here in March, going north to their nesting areas. And pied means having two or more colors in blotches. And this guy does sort of look blotchy. Pileated woodpeckers. Here the adult's feeding one of its little woodpeckers. And they're seen more often nowadays, perhaps either because their population is increasing or they're getting more used to people. Pileated woodpeckers are the model for the cartoon character Woody the Woodpecker. And on the canal, a good place to look for them is north of Muller's store in Robsville. A pine siskin are similar to goldfinches, but they're a little more scrappy. They're birds that come down from the north in late fall. And Carole had a story in October of 2012. In an unusual circumstance, she had a whole slew of pine siskins at her feeder. So she went out and bought a whole lot of special and different kinds of food for them. She was so excited. And then they stayed, but 2 days before Hurricane Sandy, they all just disappeared. So might lead you to believe that birds know what the weather is going to be. Here's a pine warbler. Again, one of those early neotropical migrants coming up from Central America to the north. They appear here in April. And this picture was taken in the stand of pines in Tinicum Park along the canal. The prairie warbler, another neotropical migrant. And interestingly, it sings up the scale. Oh, that isn't the scale. Anyway, imagine the scale. Now you know how musical I am. They're very fond of red cedar trees, and there are a lot of those in the Giving Pond by the canal in Tinicum Township. The prothonotary warbler. It's primarily a southern bird, not very common here. It has been seen at the Flag Barn up in Riegelsville for 2 years in a row. The owners of the barn even put up a cavity nest to be attractive. This year, the male is up in Riegelsville and sings, but no female has appeared. The purple finch. The male is a rosy raspberry sort of red, and the female is drab looking. There aren't a whole lot of them. House finches are much, much more dominant. Oops. One's out of order. Oh. So these are redheads. Of course, they look just like ducks. They can be seen here in March during that duck migration season. They breed in the north in the summer, and then they go south for the winter. And interestingly enough, Carole took this photograph up in Easton in January when they were having the polar plunge, where nutty people jump into the river when it's freezing cold. So they were a little ahead of themselves. Now the next surprise will be, what bird is next? Aha, the red-bellied woodpecker. These again are a southern bird, and they arrived here in the 1990s. They're now sighted as far north as the northern counties in Pennsylvania and lower New York State. They are here year-round now, and they eat insects and fruit and berries. The red-breasted merganser. Carole remembers taking this photograph on a very, very cold March day. Red-breasted mergansers are not at all common. And guess what is? Common mergansers. In fact, you can have a flock of 1,000 common mergansers swimming together and then find 5, maybe 10 red-breasted mergansers in the group. A red-eyed vireo. These are summer residents, and they're very common. As you can see, they sort of blend in. And they say, "How are you? I am fine." The red-headed woodpecker is not at all common here. They're Again, more of a southern bird. It hasn't moved north yet. And this shot was taken along the canal in Washington Crossing Park. A red-shouldered hawk flying with a snake. Same family as red-tailed hawks, and red-shouldered hawks prefer rodents and snake. And they aren't like red-tailed hawks. They don't stake out bird feeders, waiting for a good meal. Red-tailed hawks are everywhere. They're perfectly comfortable with living with people. And their preference is to sit in the trees at the edge of the woods that overlook a field where, of course, there are mice and rabbits to pick from. They also hang out on ledges of city skyscrapers and have been seen in Central Park in New York City. The red-winged blackbirds are harbingers of spring. They arrive here usually the last week in February, and then they stay for the summer. They nest in bushes, and the nest is just a couple of feet above ground, which may be the reason why the female is so drab. You can find red-winged blackbirds in the Phragmites stand growing north of Jugtown Hill Road along the canal. You can also find them at Loch 11 and New Hope sometimes. Ring-billed gulls. Don't call them seagulls. There are many types of gulls, and these guys are not seashore gulls. They can be found in parking lots and landfills because they are scavengers, and they do congregate in the winter in the Delaware River at the forks of the Delaware in Easton. And Carole wanted me to tell you that they were in no way threatened at all. Here's a ringneck duck. They are primarily lake ducks, but every once in a while, some can be found swimming in the river. They're called ringneck because the male has a maroon ring that's not terribly prominent on the back of its neck. Rose-breasted grosbeaks. They arrive in the spring at blossom time and are known to eat flower petals. They're nesting right now. Their beaks, you can see the shape of them, are perfect for gobbling down sunflower seeds and bird feeders. They're very good at that. This is a ruby-crowned kinglet. It's a very small bird that's only here in the winter. It's called ruby-crowned because a tiny red spot appears on the top of the male's head when he's busy attracting females. And a ruby-throated hummingbird. Ruby-throated hummingbirds are the only species of hummingbird east of the Mississippi. And only the males have a ruby throat, which sometimes it'll be charcoal gray. Females have a plain throat, and juveniles have stripes on their throats. They make their nest with pieces of lichen, tiny, tiny little nest, and they're very well camouflaged. It can just look like a growth of lichen on a tree branch. They, as well as nectaring on hummingbird feeders and flowers, they eat small insects. And Carole feels extremely lucky to have caught this picture, which was taken in the flower field at Trogger's farm. This is a leucistic ruby-throated hummingbird, essentially an albino, except leucistic means that it has some pigment. In this case, the eye is black. If it were a true albino, the eye would be red. And this picture was taken in a garden, actually on a porch along the Delaware Canal. The leucistic hummingbird hung around for about 3 weeks, and the owner of the property had a lot of visitors at the time. And after that, just disappeared. The scarlet tanager is quite a show bird. Again, it's a summer resident, and it's fairly common here. Nest in woodlands. The male is this vivid red during mating season, and then after that's over, it molts to a safer yellow and green plumage. The female is that yellow and green year-round. The screech owl is a small owl, and true to its name, it screeches, particularly in the warm summer months. And as you can see, it knows how to hide itself. The sharp-shinned hawk is a small hawk, which is here year-round, and it's also a bird eater. So it likes bird feeders just fine. Snow geese. Right now they're summering up in the Canadian tundra. Flocks of thousands will head to Pennsylvania and point south from late November through January. Around here, they can be seen in the fields behind Riegelsville during the day, and then they fly across the river to the Powhatan grasslands for the night. They like cornfields. They do not like soybean fields, and the sight of them rising from the fields is really breathtaking. A solitary sandpiper is considered a shore bird. They are very, very fond of mud flats. So when the canal is dewatered, it thinks the canal is the very best place. We might not, but it does. The solitary sandpiper can be distinguished because it has a full circle or ring around its eye. The song sparrow is another LBJ, which I told you about last time. LBJ stands for a little brown job, because there are lots of them. Here year-round. And interestingly, they sing in all months except the dead of winter. Most birds sing only during the mating season. Here's a spotted sandpiper, and its distinguishing features is that it has broken eye rings. So you can see parentheses above the eyeball and a parentheses below the eyeball. The ring doesn't go completely around the eye. And it likes to bob up and down. And here is the personality. This is Toulouse, who probably was a domestic goose. He was first spotted up at Groundhog Lock, but the Canada geese there didn't like him a bit. So he moved down to the Homestead store in Upper Black Eddy, where each day he was provided with his own dishes of water and food. He hung out there for a reasonable amount of time and then disappeared. So no one knows what happened to Toulouse. A tree swallow is known for its swooping ability and for eating insects while on the fly. They nest in cavities or boxes, and in that they compete with eastern bluebirds. The tree swallows are more competitive than eastern bluebirds, so the state park staff has been putting out additional boxes so that everybody can be accommodated. The tufted titmouse, again here all year round, though they're seen more often in the winter because they really like bird feeders. The turkey vulture, they're scavengers. They differ from black vultures because they have a red face and their bodies have a slightly different shape. They used to migrate, but ever since the 1970s and 80s, they stay here year round. And they fly in flocks with black vultures, but they don't sleep together. They sleep in trees. And there can be several hundred in a flock. And turkey vultures seem to move from town to town. For a while, there was a flock in New Hope, and then that flock seemed to move north to Point Pleasant, and now there's a flock in Riegelsville too. The warbling vireo is a small bird that both sings and blends in well. They like to be around water. And again, they're another neotropical migrant. The white-breasted nuthatch is here all year long. Their habit is to climb up and down tree trunks and branches, poking in bark with their long, pointy beak in search of tasty morsels. The white-throated sparrow. This is a male, and he has his breeding plumage on, and we know that because of that yellow patch. His song is Old Sam Peabody, and it summers up in Canada. Wild turkeys. Carole said, sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. Right now we're in a you don't see them period. The willow flycatcher sits upright, waiting for insects, and when one comes by, he flies up and catches it in its beak. And his song is Fichu, Fichu. And here we have wood ducks. Probably, I think there are more and more wood ducks along the Delaware Canal. They're cavity nesters, and they're wood ducks, wood duck boxes that have been erected along the canal. And I would dearly, dearly love to see a wood duck go in and out of the box, because I just can't figure out how it happens. Do they stand in the roof and flip in the hole, or take a flying start and just fly into the hole? Something I want to see. If any of you know the answer, let me know, because it's a mystery to me. Here we're showing a female wood duck with one duckling. The male wood duck does his job and then has nothing whatsoever to do with the family after that. The yellow-bellied sapsucker. They come down from the north in October and they winter here. Their habit is to drill holes in a circle around a tree trunk. And so if you see a little circle of holes, you'll know that a yellow-bellied sapsucker has been around. And they either want the sap that comes out of the holes or the insects that are attracted to that sap. A yellow-billed cuckoo, another neotropical migrant. It nests here in the summer and might be seen in the vicinity of the Eulerstown covered bridge. Interestingly enough, it's one of the few birds that likes to eat caterpillars. Most birds really don't like that fuzzy mouthful. And in this case, it looks like he's caught a grasshopper, which isn't fuzzy at all. Here's a yellow rumped warbler. They arrive here in April in flocks. Carole says that she has never seen just one, always in a flock, and describes them as nice little birds. Here's a yellow warbler, active bird that nests in bushes, and they sing sweet, sweet, I'm so sweet. And there are no birds that begin with Z along the Delaware Canal. There is a zebra finch, but it's down in Australia. I put in the Z's just in case I put you to sleep with the show. So grab your binoculars, go out and see what you can find. Listen first to know where to look. And for those of you who use Facebook, we post one of Judy or Carole's pictures pretty much every day. So every day is a treat. And certainly check out our website where we have more pictures of critters and you can learn all about what the friends do, all of our projects, all of our educational efforts. And our strength are in numbers. So we very, very much encourage you to become a member of the Friends and show your support for the canal itself and to help with our efforts. And if anyone has questions, I hope you put them in chat, even though I forgot to tell you to put them in chat. And I'm going to stop sharing so I can actually see chat. Thank you all. It seems like we're having a little respite from the storm. And but we had rain, which is great. So thank you, and hope to see you out in the canal. And there are four things in chat. Well, that's easy. So far, no questions. This video will be posted on the Friends of the Delaware Canal YouTube channel in a couple days. It has to be converted first, so not quite yet. And there we go. All right, and thank you all. Thank you for your thank yous. Good night.